Health is Wealth with Dr. Mike on 1059 The Region.
You're listening to 1059 The Region, and this is Health is Wealth with Dr. Mike Carrozza. I'm station manager Tina Cortez. Good morning, Dr. Mike. We are recording over Zoom today. It's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too, Tina. I mean, I know we do a lot of the phone as well, but I mean, it's always nice to put a face, really just have somebody face to face, of course. But, things are different right now. Things are opening up. I think I'm seeing a lot of smiles in my practice. People are a little bit much more content than they were, let's say, last month.
Yes.
It's really nice feeling. It's really nice feeling to see some of the family members you haven't been able to see for a while. But the weather's been amazing,
It
and
has. We've been
this,
very lucky.
yes, and so I think this is set up for a lot of successful outdoor sort of events. Still a lot of people are really sheltered in terms of letting people into their homes and whatnot. But I mean, I think it's a little bit more forgiving, especially when you want to have those functions outside and you want to invite your family over for a barbecue. It's a little bit easier, right, Tina?
Right. And are you cautiously optimistic? Because I think many of us are feeling, while we're happy to open our doors again, we're still a little bit anxious about it, I think.
I think I'm very optimistic because I'm just going to put some things into perspective. I think the best thing that probably has ever happened is that they've made masks mandatory, and I'll explain why. A lot of people are we're talking about the second wave, right, Tina? And this is a big, this pretty much is more of a sidebar between you and I, Tina, but versus our show. We'll get into our show in a second. But my point here is, the cold and flu season has been a big problem because of transmission. And I spoke about this with one of my patients. And so if you think about the cold and flu season, that really has just people coughing and sneezing all over other people and shaking hands and all this kind of stuff. And, this is why they feel the second wave is going to be. This is one sort of thought on why a second wave is going to come, is because you're going to mix the cold and flu season with a very similar upper respiratory tract infection, which is considerably cough and fever, and influenza is that beast. And so you're going to put these two in a pool and watch them just go at it. And but now we got masks on, and now we're doing temperature checks, and now the schools are coming back, and we've made the decisions, and this is what's happening. And I think it's very important and to make a note, if you will, that the masks that are going to be covering your face now, and you don't have to sneeze in your elbow because you're sneezing in a mask. So as long as you wear the mask right, because people come into my office, and I just have a mask here since we're doing a Zoom. So this is how people are wearing a mask.
Uh-oh.
And so this is not how you wear a mask. You see, this is a surgical mask. So this is the type of mask that is actually acceptable, and it's a 3-layer mask. So this is the proper way to surgically wear the mask. So you cover your nose, you cover your face, and it's right over your ear, and it's good. And when you wear it like this as a chin strap, and you wear it like this, or you wear it like this in your face, it doesn't work. So having the mask on properly is going to actually protect a lot of people. And this is, I believe, so I'm very optimistic. And look, you know what? Only time will tell. When we get back in October or November, Tina, we're going to have our show. We're going to talk about it. We're like, Dr. Mike, you were wrong. But my point is I think hygiene is going to be at an all-time high with the cold and flu. That was never obviously high. Only some people were like hygiene, right? And now we got people wearing masks. Hygiene is going to be high. I really think Canada is going to take this to the next level, and I think we're going to be good, and I think we're going to be okay. And I think it's very important. It was a good call by our minister to make kids go back to school because they need it.
Very good. I'll take those encouraging words for
Yeah,
sure.
you got to take your listen, you got to take your vitamins. I mean, I'm going to tell
Yes.
you, this is the most important. The vitamins are going to be necessary. We know which ones those are. We've talked about them on some, different segments. So, nutritionally deficient individuals are going to be at risk. Obviously, you want to have your sunshine now so we can build up our stores. Our vitamin D's are stores. They store like our power supplies. So get outside. The summer is now. Enjoy it. We are having one of the best summers in my entire life that I don't recall It's pretty bad for farmers because there's not a lot of rain and there's a lot of drought. The grass is probably dying and whatnot, but we're getting a lot of vitamin D. And I think that's happening for a reason. We need the vitamin D. Get your bodies outside and get healthy. But Tina, I'm really excited for this show. We got somebody really special on this show. One of the reasons why a lot of people talk to me about what I shop, what I eat, why I do what I do. And, this show is going to be full circle. So of course, shopping organic, and thanks to Nature's Emporium, for sponsoring this show, because that's what we do. People say, hey, where do you shop? What do you eat? Dr. Mike, where do you go get all your organic foods and your juices and your fruits? And one of the reasons why I do what I do, and I've actually live and I breathe this way, is because of what you're going to see with our show today with Finian Makepeace from Kiss the Ground. So
that's right. Finian is coming up. When we come back, we start with the soil. The explanation is after the break. This is Health is Wealth on 105.9 The Region. Stay with us. You're listening to 105.9 The Region, and welcome back to Health is Wealth with Dr. Mike. I'm Tina Cortez, and now over to Dr. Mike with today's first guest.
Thank you, Tina. So joining us actually on this segment of Health is Wealth is Finian Makepeace. He's the co-founder of Kiss the Ground. Finian, welcome to the show. And for those unfamiliar with Kiss the Ground, I was inspired, and part of this show is we like to inspire our listeners because obviously we'll discuss on how this all affects us in terms of our health. But maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your organization.
Thank you, Dr. Mike and Tina. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Kiss the Ground is an organization that was founded 7 years ago, mainly because a few of us got a moment of what we call an aha moment, where we were, I would say, activists in our own right, had been for a long time, environmentalists, working and trying to do what we could to help humanity in terms of what we were facing, whether it's climate change, desertification, human health, what have you. What we kind of felt before we got this aha moment was a sense of apathy of, look, the crises we are up against, what we're facing is so compounded and so intense. And really, when you looked at the numbers of it, not a very good possibility of humanity getting through it, to be quite honest. And what we got with this concept of healthy soil and regenerative agriculture was a new view and a new perspective that humanity can do this. We actually can turn the tide. We can turn the ship around and go in a different direction. And the direction is one that humanity is actually helping, meaning we are stewards of the land so that the land is actually functioning again, so that our health can get rebounded and we can have our health back, so that the climate is actually balancing. And so this big aha really started with the key component that soil can be built back faster than we ever thought. And the key part of it is while we're farming. So farming, which one of the most destructive things humans do on the planet, could actually be the mechanism and the way that we actually solve the climate crisis, the water crisis, drought, food access, etc., because we can regenerate soil. We can build back that healthy layer of topsoil faster than we ever thought possible. Science didn't really understand this until the last 20 some odd years. So we're in this amazing moment. We got a glimpse of it 7 years ago, and since then it's been catching on really from the science community, from the farming community, even from the government community of, wow, there's actually a regenerative approach that we can take that's good for the farmer's wallet, that's good for human health, that's good for communities and can bring back water supplies, et cetera, in drought-stricken, poverty-stricken areas around the globe. So the solution was one that matched the gravity of the crises we were facing. And that was such an eye-opener 7 years ago that I had my own life, I had my own career, and it was so profound. And I had the moment of saying, if I didn't know about this, and it turned out Al Gore didn't know, all these people didn't know about this. If I didn't know, probably most people in the world don't know. Lo and behold, most people in the world didn't know. And now we're really bringing back ancient indigenous wisdom. We're bringing back and getting people to grasp holistic thinking from the pioneers of those arenas. And now we have this amazing cutting edge science, the discoveries that have happened recently that are allowing us to understand the fundamentals of how soil works. We didn't know, and that's a beautiful thing because it means there's a ginormous opportunity. So that's why Kiss the Ground was born, and we really work to help educate, activate, and advocate around the world. And we train people to advocate as well. And we have a new film coming out this fall, which we're really excited to talk about in a bit. But yeah, we're basically an organization that said we have to help spread the word because most people don't know about this. We're not farmers, we're not scientists, but we can play a role to get this out to the world.
So let's talk about that a little bit. You say that you empower people all over the world to become confident advocates. How do you do that?
That's a great question. To be honest, I had a moment about 2.5 years ago where we were getting more demand to go public speak and present this material all over the world. And there's an amazing movement in the Healthy Soils Regenerative Agriculture movement. But if you look around, there's not very many spokespeople for this movement. You know, you can count them in a room. There's just a room full of them. And to really say, hey, how are we going to become a grassroots movement that's powerful? I looked at Al Gore's Climate Reality Project training, and I said, why don't we do the same thing, essentially, for people on this subject of soil health and regenerative agriculture? So we began that process about 2 years ago, and it was saying, how can we take this information that we've cultivated and created, slide decks, short videos, infographics, all of this information that helps lay people anywhere grasp this kind of complicated subject. How can we use that, hand it off to someone? You know, instead of just them watching a piece of media and being inspired, that's great. But the next step is how do they move into action? So we were saying, okay, we can train them in some of the basics here. So our course is about 70% content, learning the basics, right? But the 30% that's so crucial is practicing explaining it so that you actually feel empowered. Dr. Mike and Tina, I'm sure you both are public figures talking to audiences. Unless you talk about things, unless you practice doing it, you're still in that phase of, yeah, I read the book, but I would never go tell someone about it because I feel too nervous. So we're getting people over that hump and then giving them the assets so that they can take those into the world. And that's one of our courses called Soil Advocate Training that we have that trains people to be more empowered soil advocates, whether you're a farmer who wants to relate to your consumers about why this is healthy for them, whether you're in business, in government, or just in university or what have you, or a passionate person. You can take these. It's for anyone to become an advocate. Because the premise, not to ramble on here, but the premise was I wasn't a soil advocate. I was just a touring musician. You know, I was an activist, but I wasn't a soil advocate. I learned, and I want to be able to speed up people's process so that it doesn't take them 5 years to get where I'm at.
I like that, and I wanted to. One of the reasons why I wanted you on the show, many reasons, of course, because of course your initiative is amazing, and I want to really spread the word on this truly amazing, organization you're a part of. But you know, when I was at one of your at the major talk where I met you and you were speaking, I really got inspired because the Earth is very similar to the human body. And I'm sure you've heard this: broken gut, broken soil. I mean, there's a huge, there's a huge correlation. But the human body has an amazing ability to regenerate itself and heal itself when given the right opportunity. And so for our listeners out there, they're probably thinking, why is this guy talking about soil and how is this related to my health? Well, actually, it's probably the single most important thing that you can actually do. Because what you put in your body and giving yourself that opportunity to actually get yourself well is going to be instrumental on the entire human body. But not only that, I mean, it's similar, Finian, and you can attest to this as well. It's similar to the farmers. We can preach a lot. So I do this in practice, and I preach to my patients, this is what you need to do, and this is what you need to eat. But if they don't do it, then really they're not going to see that kind of regeneration, if you will. I mean, I'm not stealing the quote, but I mean, we're trying to regenerate the body to flourish. And we got this huge problem right now, which is this gut microbiome issue. and the entire microbiome is sort of, if you will, is dissolved. But for our patients, and we're trying to heal and get patients to that next level when they're not
Yeah.
feeling well, they just really don't know what choices they need to make. When we arm them with the right information, this is when we see the body get better, and we put those individuals in the driver's seat to say, you know what, I'm actually going to do this, and I'm going to feel better, and this is great. And one of the ways is, of course, we do this is to support, regenerative farmers
Yeah.
and local farmers that are making this movement and doing this. And of course, in our last segment, just to get you up to speed, Finian, in our last show, we actually had the Detox Project founder, who I'm sure Henry Rollins, which is, the guy's amazing. He was so amazing to have him on the show and just, spread the love in terms about the soil. And so that's why I was really excited to get you on the show, so we can actually have this wonderful full circle. And in terms of this, so, but back to you and saying, how the human body is very similar to the soil given the opportunity, right? Because there is a potential to change things.
100%, Dr. Mike, and Tina and I were talking before you jumped on about this exact thing. So the way I like that to lay it out, I take this from both Dr. Mark Hyman and Ray Archuleta, who is a teacher of regenerative agriculture, was with the NRCS, our Natural Resource Conservation Service, for 20 some odd years. What they talk about a lot is chronic stress. And you just mentioned something that's so important for people to grasp, is our bodies, in most cases, obviously when we get older, there's other atrophying things that go on. But in most cases, our bodies are quite literally regenerating all the time. So when we take this analogy of the microbiome, so just to give everyone up to speed on this, I could have a microbiome on my cup. I have a microbiome on my arm. Of course, I have a microbiome in my gut. I have a microbiome in the soil or on this leaf. Microbiomes are just where microbes live, and they're a biology. They're all this biology, and they're doing things. They're functioning. They have a reason for being on existence on plant leaves. Why do they exist on plant leaves? There's reasons for that. They've evolved together, right? So when we talk about chronic stress, what gets overlooked a lot here is microbe killing and not allowing for the microbes that are supposed to be somewhere to populate. So if we look at soil, for example, when we till the soil, well, actually, let's back up. In a healthy teaspoon of soil, there can be more microbes than there are people on planet Earth. That is a lot of microbes. And so our comprehension of what they're doing, why they're there, how they're helping, et cetera, is extremely limited still. We know more about the stars in the galaxy, quite honestly, than we know about what's happening in the functionality of all those microbes and living organisms in the soil. So when we're killing them, what happens is our system gets degraded. So if we take soil, for example, when you till the soil, when you leave soil bare, when you apply significant amounts of chemical fertilizers or pesticides and insecticides, if you're robbing the soil of its nutrients by having runoff and soil loss, what you're creating is a condition where the thing can't function anymore. So when we talk about our gut health, when we're annihilating these microbes, what happens is, I don't think this is totally accurate, but bear with me for this analogy, but weeds spring up. And what I mean by that is different microbes start to occupy that space that aren't healthy, aren't the microbes that make you a healthy person. The same thing will happen with a damaged soil system. Your weeds will start to pop up because they're part of the healing process, but they're not the ultimate king species that's supposed to be on that land, that's helping that land to reach its highest point of health. So this idea of chronic stress, I think, is so important when people realize, Dr. Mike, that what they're consuming is harming them, even if it's like, oh, this is not the food that makes me fat, or this is not the food that does this to me. You can be eating things that are harming your microbiome so much, and all you have to do in many cases is stop eating those things. In severe cases, you do need to help the microbes come back, and there are ways to do that. We do probiotics, you do other things. You can even do fecal transplants. Like there's the extent of helping your body regain those microbes in a quick way. but the repopulation can be quite rapid and quite significant. Same with soil. If you have dead, depleted soil, you can jumpstart the soil building system so that the soil becomes healthy again. And so my whole spiel is really trying to say microbes are the key. And we haven't explained how soil systems work right now, but essentially for plants to access minerals and nutrients, they need microbes. Over 70% of the microbes in almost every case that a plant absorbs are made available by microbes digesting the soil particles first so that the plant can actually uptake those minerals. Same thing's happening in our gut. Most of what we consume goes through some sort of digestion process by the microbes first so that we can use that substance or those minerals from what the microbes had essentially digested. I know that's still a slightly analogous because they're so small and they're not quite doing a full digestion. But the point is that microbes are crucial, whether it's in our bodies or on the soil. So we have to make sure that we're helping them to prosper, essentially.
So Finian, what do you want to say to that average listener who says, I'm not a farmer, I just go to the grocery store, do my shopping, feed my family. What can I do about this? What's your message to them?
Perfect. Super easy one. Wheat. I believe starting in 1996 approximately, the amount of glyphosate sprayed on wheat, conventional, non-organic wheat, started to skyrocket. Why? Because they were essentially using it right before harvest to help the harvest process, to make it so the wheat was drier, so it's easier to combine, and then they were making it so it goes its final seeding process. So it actually tries to survive, and then it shoots up its last seed, so you get a bigger crop bump. So those two factors made it so starting in the late 90s, we were adding glyphosate to wheat right before harvest. So now when you're eating non-organic wheat, you're consuming a lot of glyphosate. Again, it's marginal by one piece of bread, but if you're eating it for 5 years or your children are eating it for 5 years, that is going to make a significant impact on what's happening in the tight junctions and the microbes in your gut. So it's a really important factor for your health. That's one example, Tina, is stop eating non-organic bread. That's what I tell a lot of people is if you want to do one thing, to cut that wheat, because most people aren't aware of that huge onslaught of glyphosate that started in the late 90s.
And we touched on this on our last show because, as you know, Finian, from the Detox Project, we did speak about how they do this as well with oats. And right now in Canada, I know you're out sort of east, right? So
I'm from Ithaca, New York, but I live in Los Angeles.
So I mean, in Canada right now, they just put a ban that they're not allowed to spray the oats right before they harvest them.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
So I mean, it was a huge
huge step.
Yeah, it's a huge step. Obviously, the glyphosates is what we discussed in our last segment for our listeners, and this is what's causing our leaky gut syndrome and our major deterioration of the lining of the intestinal tract for some patients who are chronically ill. And I have to say this, if I had to change my name of my sort of practice, I would call it regeneration, sort of body regeneration, because I love the term regeneration. Like
change it.
Yeah, just change it, just because this is the idea, right? It's just a change. And you mentioned about something really important, and it's close to my heart because where we're from, and there's a little tight community, especially the background that I come from is a really tight Italian sort of background, and spaghetti, pasta, and wheat is probably 90% of the diet. Mm-hmm. And it's really challenging to make that one change when you tell somebody, right? Because they're going to go buy that loaf of bread or that pasta for 69 or 99 cents, and then they have to go pay $2.99 for probably half of the amount of pasta that they would get for the 99 cents, and they got to pay that extra $1.
Well,
right?
Dr. Mike, it's different in Canada because I don't know what to say to Canadian folks here because they have an advantage where you have a public health care system. In the U.S., we just say you're going to pay for it now or you're going to pay for it later. Exactly. Those bills to go in and fix that in the doctor's office are quite high. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Absolutely, trust in that as well, because we're talking about years. And then we know about the certain health implications that comes about with this as well. So I think that was a very good point. And then, you know,
But
if you think
just
of
one more quick thing on that. I was just giving that, Tina, as one example. There's
one
of
example,
course a myriad. You look like the what is it, I'm forgetting the phrase they have, the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 14 or some 13, from the Center for,
I think it's 17 now, but it's up to like
okay,
17.
but that's a great, just look up Dirty Dozen, Clean 15, or whatever the phrase is on Google, and you'll find that. Those are from our friends in Washington, D.C., and that'll help you out just in the grocery store. But go ahead. Sorry, Mike. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, I mean, and so if we talk about the Dirty Dozen, and these are things like blueberries and strawberries that really don't have a peel, don't have that thick peel that you can sort of peel off and have that protective barrier. As Finian mentioned, some of these plants, they really have these thick barriers, these microbes. And the biggest problem is that, you know, this glyphosate is really killing off the microbes, not only in the plant, but it's affecting the microbes in our gut. And that's usually what's happening. And that's when we start talking and using the terms, and this term that is pretty much being used globally right now is broken gut, broken soil. I mean, they're correlated. Really, they are.
And I love that you say broken. It's an analogy. Just to wrap up here, I think we're running out of time, but that's been really helpful to get across to policymakers, business folks, farmers. When we give the analogy of broken, it's super powerful. And I'll use my cup again as a demonstration. I tell the audience, what is the cup designed to do? Hold liquid. If we break the cup, shatter it into hundreds of pieces, it no longer does the job it was designed to do. So when we think of evolution, in the case of soil, 500 plus million years of coevolution with fungi and bacteria and all the nematodes, et cetera, they're designing systems of soil aggregation that literally hold in an aggregate 20 times their weight in water. These are nature's magnificent super sponges, essentially. So when we break soil, or when we break our gut, but let's take soil, for example, we're dealing with a phenomenon. This comes back to this key word, regeneration, where we're trying to sustain a broken cup. So imagine how crazy that is our government's billions and billions of dollars, trillions of dollars going into sustaining the broken pieces of the cup to get the maximum out of the broken pieces of cup that we can. That is the loop that we're on right now. The insanity of humanity is trying to say, let's sustain the broken pieces and try to do what best we can with them. What we're saying with regeneration, we didn't explain how plants work, but essentially the soil is built, but plants pump sugar into the soil, 30 to 40% of their carbohydrate sugars, to feed microbes who create glues that literally glue the soil structure back together. We can glue the cup back together so that it functions as it was designed to function again. That is the amazing part of regenerative agriculture. If you just look at water as, you know, the essence of life, we can, instead of sustaining broken, we can literally rebuild the cup. And that's what this concept of regeneration versus sustainability is so crucial for our listeners and people out there to break free of the sustainable mentality and move into seeing the world as a place where humans can be stewards of regeneration, whether it's in our gut or whether it's on the soil directly. That can change everything.
And then when we talked about, so, you know, first of all, Finian, you know, can you come back on the show? Because we'd love to have you again.
Of course, yeah. We didn't get to cover everything, I know, so we have to.
No.
Yeah, we have to get you back. And when we do come back, I want to get into a little bit of more details for our listeners about the tilling experience and what that tilling does, because I've actually seen some of your experiments and they're pretty amazing. And to talk about the runoffs and the streams and the water we drink, and then talk about the you know, things like the climate change and how this is affecting. But that's, you know, thank you very much for coming on the show. Tina, do you have any other questions?
No, I think we'll have to wrap up our science class for today, gentlemen. And Finian, if our listeners want to connect with you, how can they do that?
They can go to our website, kisstheground.com, kisstheground.com, not .org. We are a nonprofit in Los Angeles, and we would love for you to sign up to help the movie be promoted. It's coming out this fall in September. We're so excited. And also, they can sign up on the wait list for the soil advocate training if they're interested in becoming an advocate, or just
Excellent. Looking
learning
forward to
more.
part
Yeah.
2 of our conversation next week. And Dr. Mike, where can our listeners follow you?
Well, they can reach us at AppleMed Clinic on Instagram, or they could give us a call at our office, 905-417-4000. Of course, we can help regenerate you. Soon to be AppleMed. We're going to change the name. It soon will be Regeneration. But they can also just email us at info@applemed.ca and just drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you.
Terrific. That's it for us. Previous episodes of Health is Wealth on 1059theregion.com. Thanks for listening.